Have you ever felt that there's something deep within you, a quiet, persistent whisper that tells you your life was meant for more than just going through the motions? Has this ever happened to you, where in the middle of your routine, a sudden thought strikes, this can't be all there is? What if I told you that your very existence is not a random occurrence, but the unfolding of a divine blueprint, etched in the mind of God long before you took your first breath? But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. Every human life carries this secret design, not a rigid destiny that traps you, nor an accident of chance, but a master plan infused with purpose. Imagine your soul as a unique note in the grand symphony of creation, a tone that only you can produce. This isn't poetic exaggeration. It's the reality of your existence. You are not an echo of someone else's dream, but an original composition written by the divine to bring something only you can offer. And if you've ever felt out of place, restless, or uncertain about your path, perhaps it's because that note hasn't yet been fully played. Jeremiah 29:11 speaks with startling clarity. "For I know the thoughts I think toward you, says the Lord, thoughts of peace and not of evil, to give you a future and a hope." Notice the certainty in those words. God's plan is not a vague suggestion. It is precise, intentional, and entirely good. What you're about to discover might surprise you. This plan isn't hidden behind a wall of mystery, accessible only to a chosen few. It's already alive within you, waiting for your recognition. And the way to uncover it isn't by frantic searching or comparing yourself to others. It begins with silence. The kind of silence that allows your inner voice to finally be heard. Stay with me until the end, because as we go deeper, you'll see that discovering your true vocation is less about finding something out there and more about remembering something within. You were born carrying this blueprint, carrying the coordinates to your perfect place in God's design. The problem is that life often layers over it. Expectations, fears, cultural noise, and borrowed ideas about who we should be. These layers don't erase the plan, but they do cover it, leaving us feeling disconnected from our own life's music. Picture for a moment that there's a path already laid out for you, one that fits not only your skills but your deepest joys, your truest values, and your soul's very rhythm. When you walk that path, things align, not because they're always easy, but because they're always right. Provision flows, peace settles, and even challenges feel purposeful. This is not wishful thinking. It's a spiritual law. When you align your mind with God's mind, life begins to organize itself around your calling. But here's the catch. Most people live turned away from that inner design, chasing jobs instead of callings, pursuing what's safe instead of what's sacred. They confuse activity with purpose, and in doing so, they spend years playing someone else's note in the symphony. Have you ever caught yourself doing that, fitting into a mold that doesn't belong to you, yet afraid to step out of it? That's the silent ache of an undiscovered vocation. Today, we're going to pull back the veil on that ache. We'll explore how your unique life is already intertwined with a divine plan, how this plan always seeks your good, and why the journey to it is as much an inward discovery as it is an outward adventure. We'll see why the first step isn't to rush, but to listen, to tune in to the sacred frequency of your own soul, and recognize the design that has been there since the beginning. And as we take this journey together, remember, the note you carry is waiting to be played, the plan is waiting to be embraced, and your life's great symphony is about to begin. But the first movement starts in a place you might not expect. If this added something valuable to your journey, stay connected here so you don't miss what's coming next. There's a hidden truth about finding your real place in life that most people overlook. It's not about running faster, doing more, or forcing answers. It's about learning to pause in a way that feels almost unnatural in today's noise-driven world. The two most powerful keys to discovering your vocation are not found in any resume workshop or career test. They're found in what I like to call the spaces between, moments of metaphysical silence and the art of reading life's providential signs. Silence, in this sense, isn't just the absence of sound. It's the deliberate act of stepping out of the endless current of thoughts, opinions, and external pressures, so you can finally hear the soft undercurrent of your own soul. Think of it as slipping behind the scenes of your everyday life, where the script is still being written and where the real decisions are taking shape. This is where mindset shifts happen. This is where you stop reacting to life and start creating from a deeper place. It may sound almost too simple, but anyone who has practiced even a few minutes of this deep stillness knows its impact. In those moments, you're no longer trying to convince the world of who you are. You're listening to the inner confirmation of who you've always been. And what happens next is remarkable. Clarity starts to emerge not as a lightning bolt, but as a quiet knowing that begins to guide your choices, your movements, your next steps. The second key, providential observation, is about becoming a student of the patterns and signs that appear around you. Life has a way of arranging certain moments, people, and opportunities in a sequence that is far too precise to be random, but you'll only notice them if you're paying attention. These are the subtle revelations that feel like they've been placed in your path at exactly the right moment. A conversation that sparks an idea, a phrase you keep hearing from different sources, an unexpected opening that aligns perfectly with something you've been contemplating. When you bring these two keys together, something shifts on a fundamental level. Silence tunes your inner ear, observation sharpens your outer vision, and as they work together, you start to realize that God's will, far from being a set of strict rules, is an unfolding alignment between your deepest truth and the opportunities that arise in the world around you. It's a current that moves from the inside out, shaping the external according to what's been awakened within. This is why forcing outcomes so often leads to frustration. If the internal alignment isn't there, the external structure will feel heavy, unnatural, and unsustainable. But when you're in sync, even challenges have a strange sense of rightness to them, as if they're part of the architecture holding your purpose in place. You begin to navigate decisions differently, not from panic or scarcity, but from trust, a trust built on the lived experience that the path reveals itself when you are listening and looking with intention. And here's where the transformation truly begins. You stop chasing and start allowing. You stop doubting every move and start reading the signs like a personal language between you and the divine. It's no longer about demanding answers, but about recognizing that the answers have been quietly walking beside you, waiting for you to notice. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because when these two keys start unlocking the door to your vocation, the way you see timing, opportunity, and even setbacks will change completely. They won't just be events. They'll be part of a living conversation between your soul and the path it was meant to walk. Write in the comments, "This makes sense to me." There's a moment in everyone's journey when the noise of the world clashes with the quiet certainty inside, and the tension between the two becomes impossible to ignore. This is where the concept of obedience takes on an entirely different meaning. It's not about bowing to external demands or living according to someone else's checklist of what life should be. It's about tuning into the truth that has been anchored at the very center of your soul since before you even arrived here. That truth isn't negotiable. It's the original imprint, the seed of purpose God has already placed in you. When you start to recognize that, you also realize that obedience isn't a form of limitation, it's liberation. It frees you from the exhausting habit of constantly seeking approval, chasing trends, or bending yourself into shapes that were never meant for you. Instead of looking outward for direction, you begin to see that the coordinates have been inside all along, waiting for you to trust them enough to act. That trust becomes the bridge between knowing your path and walking it. And here's where the hidden truth about vocation comes into view. Your calling isn't something you build from scratch, like assembling a piece of furniture from scattered parts. It's not a random mix of interests, nor a product of market demand. A true vocation is a divine idea, woven directly into the fabric of your being. It's part of your spiritual architecture, permanent, precise, and deeply personal. Even if life takes you through detours, delays, or decisions that seem unrelated, that divine idea never disappears. It waits, quietly, for alignment. This changes everything about how you see your career, your decisions, even your challenges. If vocation is a divine idea, then you're not creating it, you're uncovering it. That means you're not in a race against time or competing for limited opportunities. The space you're meant to occupy was designed for you alone. No one else can take it, and nothing you've done can disqualify you from it. This shift in mindset is where transformation begins. The anxiety about being too late or off track starts to dissolve because you realize you're moving in a relationship with something eternal, not a deadline set by the world. Of course, this doesn't mean you can sit still and wait for it to fall into your lap. Recognizing a divine idea requires engagement. It calls for decisions that reflect your inner knowing, even when they go against the safe or predictable choice. Sometimes it's about walking away from what everyone else celebrates because it doesn't align with your soul's blueprint. Other times, it's about staying the course when no one else understands why you're doing it. In both cases, the compass is the same: obedience to the truth within. The impact of living from this place is profound. Your work stops being just work. It becomes an extension of who you are. Conversations feel different. Daily routines take on meaning. Even setbacks shift from being obstacles to being part of the design, refining your ability to express the calling you carry. It's a journey that's less about climbing ladders and more about deepening roots, because the higher your life reaches, the stronger its foundation needs to be in what's real. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because understanding vocation as a divine idea opens the door to exploring how its essence stays the same even when its outward form changes, and why that matters for the way you navigate every stage of your life. Put down. I'm also on this path. One of the most liberating revelations you can have is realizing that your calling is not tied to a specific job title, industry, or role. Jobs are like garments you wear for a season. They can be swapped, altered, or even set aside entirely. But your vocation is the fabric beneath it all, a permanent thread woven into the tapestry of your soul. It doesn't vanish when you leave a position, and it doesn't magically appear when you get hired somewhere new. It has always been there, rooted in God's eternal thought for you, constant through every shift in circumstance. This truth can transform the way you view change. When you know your vocation is anchored in something eternal, transitions no longer feel like identity crises. You can leave one role and step into another without the fear of starting over, because the essence of who you are and what you're here to express remains untouched. A change in scenery doesn't erase your purpose. It simply offers a different stage on which to live it out. And that brings us to an even more subtle but powerful insight. Vocation is essence. Work is form. The two are connected, but they are not the same. Your essence might be about bringing healing, inspiring creativity, fostering order, or awakening truth. The form could be anything from baking bread to sculpting stone, teaching a classroom to managing a team, writing a book to building a business. The activity itself is the outer container. The spirit you bring is what carries the real weight and impact. Make sure you're part of this space. There's so much more we can explore together. This shift in mindset frees you from the trap of defining yourself by a label. Too often, people cling to a title as if it were the sum total of their worth, terrified that without it, they'll disappear. But when you understand that your work is simply one expression of a much deeper essence, the anxiety begins to fade. You start to see that you can adapt, innovate, and reinvent without ever losing the core of who you are. Think about how this plays out behind the scenes of a life. Someone whose vocation is to nurture could be a nurse, a chef, a community organizer, or even a gardener. The form changes, but the underlying current, the energy of care, of tending to life, remains constant. That's why some people seem to fit anywhere they go. They aren't chasing the form, they're carrying the essence with them. It's what allows them to bring light into a hospital ward one year and into a family kitchen the next, without missing a beat. When you live this way, work becomes less about what you do and more about how you do it. Every task becomes an opportunity to let your essence flow. That's why some individuals, even in the most ordinary roles, leave an extraordinary impact. They infuse their actions with the spirit of their calling, turning the simplest tasks into expressions of purpose. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because when you start operating from the essence of your vocation, instead of clinging to its temporary forms, you unlock a kind of freedom and creativity that changes the way you approach opportunities, challenges, and even uncertainty itself. Write in the comments, "This makes sense to me." It's a hidden truth that the perfect place for you isn't marked on any map. You could cross oceans, change cities, or step into the most prestigious office, and still feel misplaced if your inner state is out of alignment. Your true position is not about location, status, or coordinates on a GPS. It's a state of consciousness. When your mind aligns with God's mind, the outer world begins to reflect that order. Doors that once seemed locked swing open without force. People, resources, and opportunities start appearing in ways that defy linear explanation, as if life itself were orchestrating a path for you. This is why so many chase the right environment, but never find peace. They keep thinking, if I just move there, if I just work there, then everything will fall into place. But without the inner shift, the outer change can quickly feel like the same old scenery with a new backdrop. The real transformation begins when your internal landscape is reordered. It's like tuning an instrument. Once the strings are in harmony, every note resonates, no matter where you play it. And this is exactly what Jesus pointed to when he said, "Seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added to you." The kingdom isn't a distant place to travel to. It's the reality of God's order alive within you. When that becomes your focus, everything else begins to align naturally. You're no longer forcing outcomes or bargaining with circumstances. You're living in a current that moves with precision and purpose. Behind the scenes of this principle is a radical mindset shift. You stop making decisions from fear or lack and start making them from trust. You no longer ask, "What can I get?" but "What am I here to give in this moment?" That subtle shift changes the energy you bring into every space, and it changes the way spaces respond to you. This is where the impact becomes visible. The perfect place may turn out to be somewhere you never expected, because it's not defined by glamour, comfort, or public approval. It's defined by fit, and fit happens when your inner alignment meets the needs of a particular space or season. It could be a role that seems small to others but feels expansive to you, or an opportunity that appears modest but becomes a catalyst for something far greater. Seeking the kingdom first is not about neglecting practical steps. It's about ensuring those steps are taken from a foundation that can hold the weight of your calling. Without that, even the most promising opportunities can collapse under pressure. But when your consciousness is rooted in God's order, you carry your perfect place within you, and it manifests wherever you stand. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because once you understand that your outer life is a mirror of your inner state, the way you approach timing, preparation, and even setbacks takes on a completely different meaning. The so-called delays, detours, and challenges become part of the alignment process, shaping you for the moment when everything converges. Write in the comments, "This makes sense to me." Everything we see built in the physical world once existed as an invisible design. Just as no architect begins construction without a blueprint, the life you step into is first shaped by the images you hold within. These inner pictures, sometimes vivid, sometimes faint, act like silent instructions to your reality. They inform your decisions, filter your opportunities, and even shape how others perceive you. The hidden truth is that the quality of your outer life will rarely surpass the clarity and depth of the vision you carry inside. But here's where most people get stuck. They underestimate the creative power of their inner world. They treat thoughts as fleeting, harmless impressions, not realizing they are the raw material from which the future is formed. When you repeatedly dwell on images of limitation, lack, or comparison, you're essentially drafting plans for a structure you never wanted to live in. On the other hand, when you nurture visions of service, impact, and alignment with your divine calling, you're laying the foundation for a life that can hold the weight of your purpose. If this spoke to you, keep walking with me. There's more insight and inspiration ahead. This is why purpose has nothing to do with competing for spaces someone else already occupies. True purpose is never a race. It's not about outperforming, outshining, or outmaneuvering others. It's about filling the exact place that was designed for you from the beginning. When you recognize your spiritual worth, you stop scrambling for borrowed platforms or trying to fit into molds that were never yours. Instead, you walk toward the space only you can fill, carrying an essence no one else can replicate. Behind the scenes, this shift transforms your entire mindset. You stop measuring progress by comparison and start measuring it by alignment. Your focus moves from, "Am I ahead of them?" to, "Am I true to what I've been given?" And that change alone releases an immense amount of mental energy, because competition drains what service amplifies. In competition, your attention is scattered outward. In service, it's concentrated inward, strengthening the very source from which your actions flow. When you operate from service rather than rivalry, something remarkable happens. The opportunities that are truly yours start to recognize you. You find yourself in rooms you didn't have to force your way into, conversations that open unexpected doors, collaborations that feel effortless. These are not accidents. They're the natural outcome of living in harmony with the design God placed in you. Now I want to go even deeper into this topic, because understanding how to cultivate the right inner images and aligning them with a life of service will completely change the way you approach timing, readiness, and the kind of opportunities you attract. It's not just about seeing a vision. It's about holding it with the kind of conviction that reshapes the landscape around you. Write in the comments, "I'm aligned with my purpose." There's a reason why some people seem to move through life with a quiet confidence, as if every step they take is supported by something larger than themselves. It's not luck, and it's not just skill. It's the result of staying connected to the source of their calling. Just as a branch can't bear fruit unless it remains attached to the vine, your vocation doesn't come alive through sheer effort or ambition. It flourishes when your life is rooted in Christ, because that connection is what allows your essence to flow freely into everything you do. When you are aligned with the one who planted your purpose in the first place, the work you produce is more than just output. It's fruit, and fruit is never the result of strain. It's the natural outcome of receiving the right nourishment. This is the hidden truth most people overlook. The strength to fulfill your calling doesn't come from forcing outcomes, but from staying in constant relationship with the source of your life. That relationship becomes the anchor when storms hit, the fuel when your own energy runs low, and the compass when choices aren't clear. This connection doesn't mean you'll never face challenges. In fact, you will. But those challenges won't uproot you because your foundation isn't built on shifting circumstances. You're drawing from a well that never runs dry. And that's where something powerful begins to happen. The more deeply connected you are, the more naturally your vocation expresses itself, without you having to micromanage every detail of the journey. Alongside this connection comes an unmistakable marker of being in the right place: peace. Not the fleeting kind that depends on everything going your way, but the deep, steady peace that remains even in uncertainty. It's the kind of peace that doesn't vanish when deadlines loom or when recognition doesn't come, because it's anchored in knowing you are exactly where you're meant to be. That peace is like an internal seal, confirming that you're aligned with the work God entrusted to you. Behind the scenes, peace is more than just a feeling. It's a form of guidance. It tells you when you're on track and warns you when you're drifting. There's a certain ease, even in hard work, when you're walking in your calling. It doesn't mean there's no effort. It means the effort feels purposeful, not draining. The impact of that is profound. You stop chasing every shiny opportunity and start discerning which ones actually carry the life and direction you're meant to follow. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because once you understand how the connection to your source and the presence of peace work together, you'll see why they're the most reliable indicators for your decisions, your growth, and the path your journey will naturally unfold toward. Write in the comments, "I choose to stay connected." Sometimes the greatest obstacle to finding your calling isn't that it's hidden too deeply. It's that it's buried under layers that were never yours to begin with. Over the years, we pick up borrowed thoughts, secondhand expectations, and labels handed to us by family, culture, or circumstance. These layers can feel so natural that we mistake them for our own voice, yet they quietly muffle the truth we were meant to hear. Clearing them isn't about reinventing yourself from scratch. It's about removing what doesn't belong, so the divine idea already within you can breathe again. This process can be uncomfortable, because it often means questioning beliefs you've carried for decades. You may find yourself realizing that certain dreams you've been chasing weren't born from your soul, but from someone else's vision of success. That's why self-reflection is so essential. It's the behind-the-scenes work no one applauds, but that changes everything. When you strip away the false layers, you start to recognize the distinct texture of your own calling, the way it feels when something resonates so deeply that it bypasses logic and speaks straight to your core. Be here for the next steps. The journey is just getting interesting. And this is where a subtle but crucial distinction comes into play. Your title is not your calling. A title is simply a label the world uses to describe the role you're in at a given moment. It's temporary, adaptable, and replaceable. Your calling, on the other hand, is eternal. It can flow through 1,000 different titles and still remain the same. If you mistake the title for the calling, you risk clinging to a position that no longer serves you, simply because you fear losing your identity along with it. This is why some people can step away from a role they've held for years, and instead of feeling diminished, experience a profound expansion. They understand that the form has changed, but the essence is untouched. The impact they bring, their way of listening, creating, healing, leading, doesn't vanish with a business card. It travels with them, infusing every space they enter. That's the mindset shift that liberates you from the pressure to get it right in a single career move. When you stop confusing title with calling, you also stop limiting how your purpose can be expressed. You begin to see opportunities in unexpected places, and you start making decisions from a place of curiosity rather than fear. This openness invites transformation, because it allows the essence of your vocation to adapt and expand without losing its core. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because understanding how to release false layers and detach your identity from titles will completely change the way you navigate transitions, challenges, and the seasons when your work begins to take a new form. Write in the comments, "I'm ready to uncover my true calling." One of the most freeing realizations you can ever have is that you cannot lose what is truly yours. If it was placed in your life by divine appointment, no competition, no circumstance, no decision from another person can take it away. It may change shape, it may be delayed, it may even seem to disappear for a time. But if it is part of God's blueprint for you, it will always find its way back into your path. And here's the other side of that truth. What is not yours will never bring lasting satisfaction, no matter how hard you try to make it fit. You can pour years of energy into holding on to something that was never meant for you, but in the end, it will only leave you empty. This is why clinging to things out of fear is so dangerous. It creates a false sense of security that slowly erodes your peace. Fear convinces you that letting go means losing everything, when in reality, it is often the doorway to what you were meant to receive all along. The hidden truth is that obedience to spiritual logic often feels illogical to human reasoning. It asks you to step out when the numbers don't add up, to move forward when the road ahead looks unclear, to trust when every visible sign says to retreat. Restlessness in your work is not always a sign of failure. It can be the Spirit's whisper telling you that it's time to shift, to expand, to realign. Yet so many silence that inner nudge because it disrupts their carefully constructed plans. They stay in places that no longer nurture their soul, simply because they're afraid of uncertainty. But ignoring the call doesn't make it go away. It only grows louder beneath the surface, creating a tension you can't quite shake. Behind the scenes, this is where your mindset becomes crucial. If you operate from human fear, your decisions will be defensive, always trying to avoid loss. But if you operate from spiritual logic, your choices are guided by trust in the bigger picture, even when you can't yet see how it will unfold. This doesn't mean acting recklessly. It means acting faithfully, knowing that alignment with God's direction will always lead you to the place where your life and your calling meet. And here's the remarkable part. When you dare to follow that inner direction, you begin to notice patterns, signs, and openings that were invisible before. It's as if the moment you step toward your true path, the path itself starts stepping toward you. That's the kind of alignment that changes not just your career, but the entire trajectory of your journey. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because once you truly embrace that, you cannot lose what is yours, and you choose to obey spiritual direction over fear, your decisions take on a new level of courage, and that courage is exactly what allows your vocation to fully come alive. Write in the comments, "I choose trust over fear." There is a different kind of strength that comes when you stop chasing and start consecrating. Instead of exhausting yourself trying to force doors open, you shift into a posture of trust, dedicating your energy to aligning with the place that was designed for you from the beginning. This isn't about passively waiting for life to just happen, but about actively centering yourself in prayer with the conviction that your calling already has your name on it. By divine right, it belongs to you, not as a prize to be won, but as an inheritance to be received. When you pray with that mindset, your words carry a different weight. They're not filled with desperation or bargaining. They're charged with certainty. You're not trying to convince God to give you something. You're tuning your heart to recognize what He has already set aside for you. This is where the shift begins, because once your spirit accepts that truth, your actions start aligning with it almost effortlessly. You notice details you overlooked before. You sense timing in ways that seem almost intuitive, and you develop the courage to step forward even when the next step is shrouded in mystery. But here's a hidden truth that often gets lost in the noise of our productivity-driven world. Divine guidance rarely shouts. It doesn't compete with the chaos of daily demands. Instead, it speaks in the quiet spaces we so often avoid. Silence, far from being empty, is actually the most fertile ground for revelation. It's in stillness that the static of fear, comparison, and doubt begins to fade, allowing the subtler frequencies of God's voice to become clear. This stillness isn't always comfortable. At first you might feel restless, as if nothing is happening, but the transformation taking place in silence is much like a seed in the soil, unseen, yet alive and active. In the eye's background, your mindset is being recalibrated, your priorities refined, your vision sharpened. The more you allow yourself to dwell in that inner quiet, the more naturally the pieces of your path begin to connect. Think of it as the behind-the-scenes work of your calling. Outwardly, it might look like nothing is moving, but inwardly, the foundations are being laid. In that space, you can hear not just what to do next, but also who you are meant to be while doing it. And that distinction is powerful, because it prevents you from rushing into opportunities that don't align with your essence. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because when prayer and silence work together, they don't just reveal your calling, they prepare you to step into it fully, with clarity and unshakable peace. Write in the comments, "I choose stillness to hear." There's a profound difference between moments of random quiet and the intentional choice to create space for stillness. That's why the silence at noon practice can be so transformative, not because there's something magical about the clock striking 12, but because it marks a deliberate pause in the middle of your day. 15 minutes may seem insignificant compared to the demands pressing in from all sides, yet in that small window, something powerful begins to happen. The noise of the outer world starts to fade, and the deeper currents of your own spirit begin to rise to the surface. In that silence, divine impressions have room to reach you, not in the form of grand, cinematic visions, but often as a steady certainty that bypasses overthinking. Sometimes it's a sense of peace that confirms a choice you've been hesitant about. Other times, it's the gentle stirring that nudges you toward a conversation, a project, or even a change you hadn't considered. This is the hidden truth most people miss. Guidance doesn't always arrive as answers spelled out in bold letters. More often, it's a quiet knowing that takes root and grows clearer as you protect that space of stillness. Psalm 46:10 holds an instruction and a promise at the same time. Be still, and know that I am God. Stillness is not passive, it's an act of trust. It's choosing to step away from the frantic pace and anchoring yourself in the reality that God's plan is already unfolding, even if you can't yet see every piece. When you stop trying to force clarity, you open the channel for it to come naturally. That's when the behind-the-scenes work of the Spirit becomes visible in subtle yet undeniable ways. Conversations align, doors open effortlessly, and what once felt tangled begins to sort itself out. If you found meaning here, join in so we can keep growing together. And here's where transformation quietly begins to take shape. The more you return to this practice, the more you realize that stillness isn't just a break from your day, it's a recentering of your entire mindset. Decisions start to come from a place of alignment. Instead of anxiety, you become less reactive to circumstances and more anchored in the truth of your calling. This shift changes not only what you do, but how you do it, infusing your actions with a peace that others can sense, even if they can't explain why. Now I want to go even deeper into this topic, because when stillness becomes a rhythm rather than a rare pause, it starts reshaping the way you move through every moment, making space for guidance to flow as naturally as breathing. Write in the comments, I choose stillness over noise. Entering the silence is less about escaping the world and more about tuning yourself to a different frequency. It begins with a simple choice, to step aside from the constant stream of demands and place yourself in a space where you can breathe, not just physically, but spiritually. You might find that solitude in a quiet room, under a tree, in a chapel, or even sitting in your car for a few extra minutes before going inside. The location matters less than the posture of your heart. Relax your body, feel the tension leave your shoulders, let your breathing deepen and slow. And in that stillness, affirm God's presence, not as something distant, but as a reality closer than your own heartbeat. This is not the time for lengthy speeches or elaborate petitions. It's a time to listen. The mind may resist at first, throwing distractions and restless thoughts your way. That's normal. The noise of the world doesn't fade instantly. But as you keep breathing and gently bringing your focus back, something begins to shift. You become aware of a deeper calm, a quiet strength settling in. And it's in that space that the first impressions often come. Guidance rarely arrives with the drama we might expect. It doesn't usually crash into our lives with thunder and lightning. More often, it slips in like a gentle whisper, a subtle nudge, an inner sense of yes or not yet. Sometimes it's a picture in your mind, sometimes just a phrase or a sudden clarity about a decision you've been wrestling with. Other times, it's simply a wave of peace that reassures you you're on the right path. The hidden truth is that this kind of guidance is easy to overlook if you're waiting for something loud and unmistakable. But those quiet impressions often carry more weight than the most elaborate signs because they bypass the noise and go straight to the heart. When you start recognizing and honoring these gentle whispers, something powerful happens. You begin to build trust in your ability to hear them. And with that trust comes a new kind of courage. The courage to move forward even when you can't yet explain why. This is where transformation takes root, not in grand moments of revelation, but in the daily practice of listening and responding. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because the more you learn to value and act on these subtle impressions, the more you'll find that the journey itself starts to align with a precision and grace that can only come from walking in step with divine timing. Write in the comments, I choose to listen. Keeping a journal of impressions is like charting the hidden geography of your own spiritual journey. Every time you capture a thought, an image, or a sudden inner knowing, you're marking a point on a map that, over time, reveals patterns you might never notice in the moment. At first, these entries might seem unrelated, like scattered dots on a page. But as days and weeks pass, connections begin to form. A phrase you wrote down weeks ago suddenly mirrors a conversation you had today. An image that felt random at the time now seems to foreshadow an opportunity unfolding right in front of you. This is how divine guidance often works, layer by layer, like a story being told in chapters you can only read in sequence. And then there's the beauty of providence and synchronicity. What the world calls coincidence often carries the fingerprints of a much greater orchestration. A person you've been thinking about unexpectedly reaches out. An article or book appears in your path with precisely the insight you needed. A door you thought was closed suddenly opens without your effort. These aren't random accidents. They are responses, often to prayers you've spoken in silence, and to desires you've carried in your heart long before you could articulate them. When your inner world is aligned through prayer, stillness, and attentive listening, the outer world begins to reflect that alignment in ways you can't manufacture. It's as if the unseen realm and the visible one start to move in harmony, each step you take meeting a step coming toward you. This is why the practice of recording impressions is so important. It allows you to trace these movements, to see how the inner and outer weave together into a single thread of guidance. Over time, this process reshapes your mindset. You stop seeing life as a series of unrelated events and start recognizing it as an unfolding dialogue between your soul and the divine. You realize that your decisions are no longer isolated choices, but responses to a larger conversation, one that has been happening all along behind the scenes. And in that awareness, you begin to walk differently, more attuned, more confident, more willing to trust even when the next step isn't yet visible. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because when you learn to live in this flow, where inner impressions and outer confirmations meet, you discover that your calling is not something distant to chase, but a living reality shaping each moment you step into. Write in the comments, "I see the signs." True signs have a way of speaking without shouting. They arrive quietly, carrying a weight that is unmistakable, yet never oppressive. There's no rush, no frantic push, only a calm clarity that settles into your spirit, like a deep breath you didn't know you were holding. Often, they're confirmed through meaningful repetition. You might hear the same phrase in a conversation, read it in a book, and then see it written somewhere unexpected, all within days. Or perhaps a symbol, a number, or even a certain kind of encounter keeps showing up until you finally pause and say, "All right, I see it." These patterns are not about superstition. They're the language of alignment, a gentle assurance that you're in step with something greater. When we recognize these true signs, we begin to understand the importance of the mental equivalent, the inner blueprint that shapes outer reality. Everything we experience begins as an image, a feeling, a belief held within. Before a career is born, before a calling takes visible form, it exists in the hidden workshop of the mind. Here, imagination is not fantasy, it's construction. It's where we create the exact picture of what we desire, and most importantly, the emotional state that accompanies it. If you imagine your path but fill it with anxiety or doubt, you're planting seeds that will carry those same qualities into what manifests. But when you build that inner picture with joy, gratitude, and a sense of inevitability, you invite the world to rise and meet it with the same energy. This is not about pretending or ignoring reality. It's about training your mindset to hold the shape of the life you're meant to live before it fully arrives. Just as an architect visualizes a building in detail before the first brick is laid, you're called to hold the mental architecture of your purpose long before it takes form. And when that vision is consistent and infused with peace, the outer world begins to adjust around it, drawing resources, connections, and opportunities toward you in ways that seem almost magnetic. It's a process of quiet authority, not the force of trying to control everything, but the steadiness of knowing that the unseen design is already set, and your role is to stay in harmony with it. And when you do, each decision becomes less about fear of making the wrong choice and more about stepping into the next natural piece of a plan that's been unfolding all along. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because the moment you truly grasp how your inner state shapes the tangible world, you begin to realize that the keys to your calling have been in your hands and in your mind this entire time. Write in the comments, "I hold the blueprint." Doubt is like a slow leak in the vessel of creation. It doesn't always cause an immediate collapse, but over time, it drains the momentum that would have carried your vision into reality. When you hold a mental image of your calling yet allow uncertainty to gnaw at its edges, you weaken the structure before it's fully built. and just as damaging is scattering your energy into unfocused daydreaming, jumping from one imagined life to another without ever nurturing one deeply enough for it to take root. The mind is a powerful architect, but if its blueprints change every other day, the foundation will never be poured. This is why focus must be paired with feeling. It's not enough to see the image, you have to inhabit it, to feel what it would be like to live in that reality now. The hidden truth is that the emotions you attach to your inner vision are what call it forth with power. Joy, peace, gratitude. These are the signals that align your energy with the form you desire. Fear, doubt, and impatience send mixed messages, like trying to sail with the wind blowing in two directions at once. Here is where affirmations, when used with precision and sincerity, become more than mere words. Speaking them in the present tense is a declaration to both your mind and the unseen forces shaping your path. You are not pleading for a future possibility. You are affirming a current truth, even before your senses can see it. This isn't denial, it's alignment. By saying, "I am now engaged in work that fulfills my soul," you're not pretending. It's a seed you're planting, and each repetition waters it. Over time, the soil of your consciousness begins to shift, making room for the roots of that reality to grow. It's a discipline that requires both consistency and trust. Many abandon their affirmations too soon, expecting the outer shift before the inner soil has fully prepared. But transformation works from the inside out, and every time you repeat that declaration with genuine faith, you're reinforcing the mental equivalent that will eventually translate into form. Imagine it like tuning an instrument. You're adjusting your inner resonance until it matches the vibration of the life you're calling forth. And once that match is clear, the opportunities and alignments you've been waiting for begin to find their way to you almost effortlessly. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because when you understand how thought, emotion, and declaration weave together to shape reality, you'll see why the way you speak to yourself each day might be the single most powerful decision you make. Write in the comments, "I speak it into being." When hearts and minds join in a shared intention, something remarkable happens. Group prayer is not simply the sum of individual efforts, it's an amplification, a merging of vibrations that creates a kind of spiritual momentum, far greater than what one person could generate alone. It's as if each voice adds a note to a harmonious chord, and together that chord resonates so deeply that it moves unseen barriers. This is why circles of shared affirmations hold such quiet, yet undeniable power. In them, thought is not scattered but unified. Each person becomes a witness to the other's declarations, reinforcing belief and dissolving doubt. There's a subtle but transformative shift when you realize you are not carrying your vision alone. It is being held in the hearts of others, too. But unity of thought is not enough if it's shackled by fear. One of the most persistent obstacles to walking fully in your calling is the quiet whisper of lack, the idea that there won't be enough resources, opportunities, or time to fulfill what has been placed in your heart. Scarcity is a mindset, a lens that colors every possibility with suspicion and caution, keeping you from stepping into the very spaces designed for you. Yet here lies the hidden truth. Lack is not a reality in the divine order, only a human perception. When you root yourself in the understanding that God's provision is limitless, you begin to see abundance not as a rare visitor, but as the natural atmosphere of your life. Fear of failure, too, is an illusion that thrives in the absence of trust. It narrows your vision until all you can see are the risks, blinding you to the quiet arrangements already being made on your behalf. The mind becomes like a room with locked windows, convinced the air will run out, forgetting that the very structure was built with openings to let in the breeze. This is why affirmations of divine provision are so vital. They remind you that the source of your supply is not dependent on market trends, human approval, or even your own limited strength. Every time you declare abundance with conviction, you chip away at the old patterns of fear, and as those patterns weaken, a different kind of courage emerges. Not the reckless courage of denial, but the steady confidence of knowing you are sustained by something unshakable. This courage allows you to act without being paralyzed by the what-ifs to step forward into opportunities, with the quiet certainty that what you need will be there when you arrive. Now I want to go even deeper into this topic, because when you truly grasp how fear dissolves in the presence of faith-filled action, you'll see that many of the walls in your path were never walls at all. They were just shadows cast by your own hesitation. Write in the comments, "I choose faith over fear." Forgiveness is more than a moral gesture. It is a profound act of liberation. When you release the voices that once told you you weren't enough, when you stop replaying the criticisms of a parent, the dismissive tone of a teacher, or the condescending words of a former boss, you reclaim the energy that was tied to those moments. Each of these voices is like an invisible thread, subtly pulling you back toward an old version of yourself. You may not even notice the tension, but it shapes your decisions, your risks, and even the opportunities you dare to imagine. True forgiveness is cutting those threads, not to forget what happened, but to free yourself from their authority over your present and future. And here's the hidden truth. Those voices only echo because you've been keeping them alive. Once you let them go, their power fades like a shadow in full light. This clearing of the past makes space for something remarkable. The quiet unveiling of talents you may not have recognized before. These aren't accidents or random quirks. They are divine channels, intentionally placed within you to serve a purpose beyond yourself. Talents are not just hobbies or natural inclinations. They are spiritual signatures, unique to you, meant to be refined until they become powerful tools for service. What may seem small, a gift for listening deeply, an eye for beauty, a knack for organizing chaos, can, when developed, become a force that transforms lives. Often these gifts stay dormant because they've been buried under the same layers of doubt and comparison that forgiveness dissolves. You may have dismissed them, thinking they're not special enough, because the world often celebrates only the most visible forms of success. But hidden talents carry a different kind of impact. They can open doors you never thought to knock on and connect you with people whose journeys intertwine with yours in unexpected ways. The development of these gifts is not about chasing recognition. It's about aligning with the part of you that already knows its mission. Like a river that doesn't need to be told how to flow, your talents know where they are meant to go once you let them move freely. The more you work with them, the more you'll see that they are not just abilities, but messages from the divine, reminders that you were never left without the tools needed for your calling. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because once you see how your unique gifts act as spiritual compasses, you'll understand that they don't just guide you toward your purpose, they shape the very path beneath your feet. Write in the comments, "My gifts are my guide." Joy is not simply a pleasant emotion, it's a form of inner navigation, a compass placed within you to guide your steps. While excitement can flare up quickly and vanish just as fast, true joy has weight and depth. It lingers. It roots itself in your spirit, steadying you even when challenges arise. This joy doesn't depend on everything going perfectly. Rather, it comes from alignment, from living in harmony with what you were created to do. It's the kind of quiet, steady energy that makes you want to return to your work day after day, not because you have to, but because something in it feels like home. When you find that joy, you're not chasing a dream. You're walking inside it. But joy, like any inner compass, works best when it's tuned and activated. That's why immersing yourself in the nightly rehearsal can be so transformative. This isn't just daydreaming before bed. It's a conscious, deliberate planting of seeds in the most fertile ground of your mind, the subconscious. As you lie in the stillness of the night with the day's noise fading, you create a vivid scene of your ideal workday. You don't just watch it like a movie, you step into it. You hear the sounds, smell the air, feel the texture of the space around you. You imagine the conversations, the sense of accomplishment, the gratitude flowing through you as if it's happening right now. The subconscious does not distinguish between what is real and what is vividly imagined. It simply records impressions and seeks to make them reality. By rehearsing your calling in this way each night, you train your inner world to expect it, to believe it, and eventually to manifest it. Over time, you'll notice subtle shifts. a new idea arriving in the morning, a chance meeting, a resource you didn't know you needed appearing right when you require it. This is not luck. It's the invisible architecture of your destiny taking form. One thought, one image, one feeling, at a time. And here's the hidden truth. Many people drift through life waiting for a sign, not realizing they are the ones meant to give the signal. The nightly rehearsal is that signal. It tells your mind, your spirit, and even the unseen forces working on your behalf, this is where I'm going. Prepare the way. The more real it feels inside, the more inevitable it becomes outside. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because once you see how this inner practice not only shapes your mindset but actually calls forth the resources you need, you'll understand why the line between imagination and reality is far thinner than most believe. Write in the comments, "My joy sets my direction." Vision without action is like a seed kept in a drawer. It holds life, but it will never become the tree it's meant to be. Prayer opens the channel, imagination shapes the blueprint, but it's correct action that lays each stone on the path between what you see in your mind and what you hold in your hands. This action isn't frantic or desperate. It's intentional, aligned, and often quieter than the world imagines. It's showing up consistently, refining your craft, and making decisions that match the reality you're calling into being. In this space, discipline isn't a restriction. It's a declaration that you take your vision seriously enough to honor it with commitment. But as this bridge is built, there's a hidden truth many overlook. The foundation must be laid in ethics. Without integrity, success becomes a hollow structure, impressive from the outside yet crumbling within. Prosperity that's rooted in service, where every exchange leaves the other person richer in value, trust, or well-being, creates not just wealth, but legacy. The marketplace is not merely a place of transactions. It's a living network of human relationships, where every action either builds or erodes your true wealth, your reputation, your word, your ability to be trusted. The most enduring forms of prosperity are never extracted. They're cultivated. They grow when you celebrate the success of others instead of fearing it, when you see opportunities not as scarce resources to be hoarded, but as rivers that flow more abundantly when shared. This is the mindset shift that transforms work from survival into contribution. You stop asking, "What can I take?" and start asking, "What can I give?" that creates ripple effects of blessing. And in that shift, you align yourself with a much greater current, one that moves resources, ideas, and people in your direction, not because you chased them, but because they recognize the soil of your life as fertile ground. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because the relationship between inner alignment, external action, and the unseen principles that govern true prosperity is more intricate and more powerful than most people realize. Write in the comments, "I build with integrity." There comes a moment in every journey when you feel the quiet but undeniable pull that something has shifted. The work that once felt alive and purposeful now feels tight, as though the space around you has grown smaller while your spirit has grown larger. This isn't failure, it's transition. Recognizing when a role has served its purpose is a form of wisdom, a sign that you're listening closely enough to detect when the season is turning. Releasing that chapter with gratitude keeps your heart free from resentment and your hands open for what's next. Gratitude acts like a bridge, allowing you to step away without burning what once sustained you, preserving the dignity of the past while making room for the promise of the future. This trust, however, is not a passive waiting. It's a conscious leaning into the truth that the same divine intelligence that placed you in your former position knows exactly where to lead you next. The uncertainty of that gap between leaving and arriving can feel like standing on a suspension bridge in the fog. You can't see the end, but every step taken in faith is reinforced by the one guiding you. This is where mindset becomes as important as skill, where your ability to hold a clear inner vision matters as much as your resume. When you step into work that aligns with your calling, something remarkable happens. Your labor becomes more than a means of earning. It becomes ministry. Every conversation, every decision, every moment of effort carries a thread of service, woven into something far greater than a single day's results. It's no longer about doing a job well, it's about leaving an imprint that outlives you. Legacy isn't built in grand gestures but in the accumulation of countless moments where you choose to act with integrity, compassion, and excellence, even when no one is watching. In this way, your vocation becomes both a gift and a responsibility, an offering to the present and a seed for the future. Those who come after you will inherit more than your achievements. They will inherit the atmosphere you created, the example you set, and the invisible yet enduring inspiration that your life radiated. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because understanding how to live and work in a way that both fulfills you now and shapes a lasting impact requires looking beyond the surface of success into the hidden architecture of purpose. Write in the comments, "I walk in my true calling." If you've journeyed with me all the way here, you already know how much depth and clarity can come from aligning your steps with your true calling. That's exactly why staying connected here matters. Every conversation we have is another piece of the puzzle, another light along the path. So if this spoke to you, make sure you're part of this space so you don't miss the insights and guidance we share. And I'd love to know who's been walking beside me until now. Leave a comment saying, "I'm with you until the end," so I can recognize you. If this message resonated, a simple like is a great way to keep this energy flowing. There's a video right here that complements this topic beautifully. Click and continue with me over there.